Hello, Legionnaires, and welcome to some Rando RPG livestream. Tonight, our panel of Dungeon Masters, Game Masters, referees, storytellers, and players will share their diverse tabletop role-playing game experiences to provide ideas, suggestions, and possibly even some advice for your tabletop RPG sessions. I hope you're ready to take some notes. I know I am, so let's get started. All right, hello, welcome to some Rando RPG livestream. I am John Maxley-Oshlow. I am your host, and I am truly grateful that you are with us for tonight's livestream for the discussion on Sandbox versus Railroad. Or is it Railroad versus Sandbox? I don't know. But one way or the other, we're going to talk about both and hopefully all things in betweens, and I hope you enjoy the conversation. So what do we do here on some Rando RPG livestream? Well, in segments 1 through 4, we discuss topics surrounding the tabletop role-playing game hobby with an emphasis on individual experiences, desires, and expectations. In tonight's 4 segments on Sandbox versus Railroad, we hope to provide ideas, suggestions, and food for thought for your tabletop RPG sessions. And then in segment 5 later on, let down our hair, just talk about any nerd issue of interest. If we meet the giveaway threshold, segment 5 is when we'll determine the winner. So please consider supporting Legion of Myth through the links in the live stream's description. YouTube takes 30%, Twitch takes 50% of your hard-earned money, while Rumble, PayPal, Streamlabs, and Ko-Fi take between 0 and 5% of your donations. Super chats and Rumble rants of less than $20, I will read at the end of each segment. $20 or more, I will interrupt the segment to read your rant or chat as immediately as I can. I will let somebody finish, a sentence at least. And for $50 or more, my wife just bought me more booze, so this could get interesting. But I will take a drink in your name, and you can force the panel to answer any tabletop RPG-related question of your choice right then and there. Now, if we make $100 or more in Super Chats or Rumble Rants, there will be a $225 giveaway to gift certificates for Palladium Books or Drive-Thru RPG. Bear was so close to winning last week, took second place, also known as first loser, but didn't quite make it. And I know he's going to be really happy that I just rubbed that in right there, but almost won $200. Instead, it's $225 for maybe one of you out there. Legion Myth YouTube members, as well as tonight's Super Chatters and Rumble Ranters, have the opportunity to win, but you must be watching at the time of the giveaway to claim your victory, else it rolls over to next week. And don't forget that the Legion Myth moderators will time out or even ban people who attack any panelist or chatter. Attack the argument, not the person, and keep your various social media beefs off of the show. And with that, please like the video, subscribe to all the panelists' channel found in the description. I hope I got them in the description. If not, well, they can yell at me and put it in private chat here, and I'll get it in there. And thank you for your support. All right, with that out of the way, let's start here. It's almost like we're doing a normal stream, just we got 2 people that bumped us up to the top somehow there. All right, Heath, who are you, what content or products you create, and what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Okay. Well, anyone who watches the Sunday show knows who I am. I'm a co-host of the Sunday live stream where we go over role-playing games in long format, and my specialty format is the overview. So any kind of game, really. I mean, new games, old games. I like old games, but I've done new games as well. And experience, well, I've been role-playing since I was between 8 and 10, and I'm 48 now, so that's a long time.
Year or 2?
Playing and running. And yeah, that's about it.
All right, let's jump on down to Sean there. Who are you? What content or product do you create? And what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Well, my name is Sean. I'm the producer, creator of Mage's Musings. Anybody who knows me and knows the host of my show, the Archmage Merlinster Gandaldor. Mainly D&D focused. I love all editions, but I'm primarily focused on AD&D and old school essentials. And my show is about recapping the games and talking a little bit of theory.
Awesome. All right, and joining us for the first time but he's been in chat and he's been with around Legion of Myth for quite a while, so it's good to see his face and see him on here for once. Is Lord Mateus? As with them, who are you? What content or products do you create, and what is your tabletop RPG experience?
Well, I'll start the last question first. So I've been gaming since about 1988. Started with the red box, fell in love with the hobby, and pretty much been running games, playing in games since then. And about a few years ago, I decided to start blogging and then a YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is currently going through a little bit of a change, but I've been like running games, recording myself playing those games, and then talking about those modules and stuff. I have nothing against the flip through review, but I don't really get anything out of them. And I think, this hobby can be expensive. So I want to like actually provide people like, hey, this was my experience with it. Maybe it's worth picking up. Maybe it's not, that kind of thing. And I am been dabbling in writing and publishing. I have a book with Lamentations of the Flame Princess called A Gift for All of Norway, came out last year. And I also published stuff through the Red Room. I got something coming called The Isle of the Sapphire God, hopefully by the end of the month, and an update to Wretched Folklore, a bestiary for your Wretched Country games. But yeah, that's what I do, and I hope people are enjoying it. And please check out my YouTube channel. Things are changing. Probably going to start doing a live stream in about a month or so. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
Shout out to Miguel and Sylvia from the Red Room crew. We get along with them. So all right. So the first question, Heathen Dog's gonna open it up with the answer to this, but this is actually a question for all of you. We're just gonna do this as an open panel discussion with Heathen Dog starting, and that's gonna be very simply. So I probably should have told the folks out there what we're talking about tonight, right? So we're talking about Sandbox style versus Railroad style, and this first segment is on comparing Sandbox versus Railroad. But in order to compare them, you kind of have to have a little bit of definition. We all kind of, even if we don't agree, we at least have to understand what we believe it means to be Sandbox or Railroad or something in between. So, Heathen Dog and everybody, how do you define Sandbox style and Railroad style in tabletop RPGs, and what are their key differences?
Since you gave me these questions, this is the one I wanted to make as succinct as possible.
Okay.
Just easy so a 9-year-old could understand it. Because I was a 9-year-old once and I would have loved to understand it. The definition of Sandbox or Railroad is which side of the table is the prime mover in the game. Which side of the table makes the initial decisions and the other side has to react to them. A Railroad type campaign, the game master makes all of the initial decisions, is active, and the players are reactive. In a Sandbox game, that is reversed. The players are the active movers, and the game master is reactive to the players. And that's what I came up with, trying to boil it down.
Okay. I mean, that is nice and succinct, and it definitely opens the door to some discussion. We'll move on to Sean and see what his definition of this is. And so go ahead.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, the players, to me, the Sandbox is when the players have the agency, and as you say, the DM reacts and adapts. Even if there's a pre-published or a predetermined sort of framework, you're still reacting to the players' choices, and they're in the driver's seat. They have full control over what happens. Whereas on the other side, the Railroad, it's the framework that takes center stage, and the players will often be pushed into playing through the framework, playing through the predetermined plot beats, and where they choose. You've heard of the Quantum Ogre, where it's like the DM has prepared that dungeon or prepared that encounter, and God damn it, no matter which way you go, that encounter is coming. So that's the fundamental difference there.
I might be more Railroad than I thought then. All right, Lord Mateus, again, and we did for this one. This is open discussion, so let him say his piece. But you guys are absolutely welcome to talk back and forth about your various definitions. Go ahead, Lord Mateus.
Well, I really nothing to add. I sort of feel like that is at the heart. Who is driving the game. However, I am going to quibble just a little bit. I don't like the term railroad. I actually, and I'm the risk of sounding pedantic, but a railroad to me is very, very specific. Like something that you would use maybe at a convention with it's like a one and done kind of thing. And the players are, they bought their ticket. They're on the roller coaster ride and they're just going to go have some fun with whatever the module is, whatever the game is. I prefer actually I don't prefer this, but the only real word I can think of is adventure path. I think that started with like Paizo and Path during the Pathfinder years.
What about theme
What-
park? I know
Uh,
that term's thrown around a lot as well.
I would actually use that more for a mega dungeon.
Okay.
But path, like the adventure path, is sort of, to me, better captures that Tracy Hickman Revolution XDM idea, where there's a story arc, and there maybe is a beginning, middle, and end that the game master has like this loose understanding of. But as the players are going, they do have some agency, and then the game master's just sort of like bumping them, making sure they're still kind of on this path. Whereas, like, I think a railroad, if you use railroad in a more broad definition to capture the adventure path, I think, and again, this is being very pedantic, the term railroad is becoming over inclusive and ultimately shouldn't be a pejorative, but it is a pejorative, right? Like, people say, "Oh, you run railroads, your game sucks," or whatever. And that's why I'm like, well, no, I've run adventure paths, as hokey as that sounds, but that's where I think the difference is. And but at the end of the day, it is almost like a sliding scale. On the one hand, you have like ultimate player agency, which I think is kind of like what the Bro SR does, right? They're just, the players are truly doing everything, and the DM is just a referee to make sure, calling strikes and balls and all that stuff. And then on the total opposite end is those true story games where all of the game mechanics are designed for like this collaborative, well, maybe not even collaborative, just generating a story. And I think Adventure
The players
Path,
are more tools in the game than they are actors in it, or maybe that's a bad word right now too. But
but it's like we were kind of talking about before the beginning of the stream, like the TTRPG is like this weird thing that we're still trying to understand. So like the Adventure Path Railroad is on that side of the spectrum. I just don't think it's all the way over there. The railroad, specifically speaking, would be. So that would be my, I guess, my quibble.
but it seems, generally speaking, we all agree on this, and I'm not really. You all agree on this. I'm not injecting myself as much in this one. So I'm gonna one follow up to all of this is, how do you handle player expectations and preferences when deciding between sandbox and railroad styles? And this is just, again, this is still open panel discussion, so whoever wants to start can start.
Well, I lay out my game. It's like, play my game or not. This is how I run my game, and I've had people come in and say, "Yeah, it's not for me," and they bow out. I've had other people come in and say, "I love this. When's the next session?" So I run the game I want to run, and people will. Okay. That's the expectation.
I have a funny feeling we're gonna get the same answer that way too. So, Doug, do you want to chime in on that one?
I don't even lay out my game. I mean, I don't even do that. I'll give if it's a world that I've made up, I'll give a brief description of the world that you would get in a world book or a source book from D&D, Palladium, whatever. And that's it. And if they say, yeah, I'm in, great. If they say, no, I'm not, great. I've only had one person say no, ever.
Before playing?
Before playing. Yeah. I give the world, I said, this is where we're going to play. It's like, I don't want to play there. Okay.
That's fair.
Bye. Yeah, that was it.
Anything you want to add, Lord Mateus?
Well, I have the fortunate experience right now. I have an online gaming crew who are awesome. Some of them are in the chat, and they're playing in a more sandbox style. My in-person gaming crew, I've been gaming for a very long time with, they're actually they prefer the adventure path. They're kind of passive players. They don't like taking the reins too much, and they do like waiting for me. So when I'm putting together a campaign, when I'm sitting down for the first time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this new thing, and what do I want to do? What kind of thing interests me? I start thinking about the types of players I am going to be, proposing this to, and I do try to consider their interests, and so I do lay it out. It's almost like I'm giving an elevator pitch.
Okay.
Like, oh, hey guys, I picked up the Dragonlance, hey, let's do that or whatever. But I do think communication is key in that point, especially if you're a type of game master that, like me, I love meeting new people in this hobby, and so I am the guy who has no problem picking up a rando, be like, hey, come over to my table if you want to play, and if he's a jerk, I'll get rid of him. But I think you need to be open about that. Now, I am going to interject this one thing. I am, at the end of the day, a realist. So, and like I said, the guys I've been gaming with for a very long time, almost 30 years in one case, they're my friends. So I'm not going to not consider what they want. So I may desperately want to run a Forbidden Lands campaign where we're heads crawling across the map. But if that's not what they're into, okay, I'll think of something else. I'll think of something.
Oh, and there we go.
More like an Adventure Path Railroad thing that I know that they'll appreciate and be engaged with, if that makes sense.
It does. All right. Well, ultimately, since that was just kind of an icebreaker, I think we're all on the same page. I hope, at least, I don't care if I am, but I hope you guys are on the same page with this. Go ahead.
One thing, just to clarify, we all understand that Railroad, Sandbox, most people are going to fall somewhere in between.
Yes.
Right? Yep. Most people are going to fall. So when we say Railroad or we say Sandbox, we have to agree on what that means. I propose that if you're 80% or more on the the game master is running the game, you are Railroad. If you're 80% or more, hey, the player's agency is the most important thing, then you're on Sandbox. You're 20% on each side, you're considered Railroad or Sandbox. That way we can not caveat ourselves all the time.
We'll go with that until it doesn't suit us.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
He makes a good point, because that is good for discussion purposes, because the viewer who watches this later be like, that's not really Sandbox. Look, you know what? We have to have a...
Not, there you go.
Right. Yeah,
more
exactly.
Railroad than not, just say Railroad. We don't have to keep caveating every time we answer a question.
Yeah. Okay, well, now that that's out of the way, now we're gonna get to the real show. So welcome to the show. So we're gonna start with Heathen Dog here with the first question. Now this one is directly for Heathen Dog, and what types of campaigns or storylines do you believe are best suited for the Sandbox style, and why?
Okay. Well, it would have to be single shot or up to 3 games for the entire campaign or storyline to be completed, if you want Sandbox to work well enough to get the job done. Anything longer than that, and the players are going to be able to run around, and you won't actually complete the campaign or storyline. Saying you have a campaign means you have a plan. Saying you have a storyline means you have a plan. The stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's a story. If you have a storyline, you have an idea of where you want it to go. The more time you are in a Sandbox environment, the more time the players have a chance to just wander into the desert for 40 years. So the shorter, the better. If it's going to be like an introduction to this game, like no one's ever played Forbidden Lands before, no one's ever played Marvel before, no one's ever played Star Wars before, great. This is a Sandbox thing. I have no real story, I have no real campaign. We're just going to get the feel of the game, how the dice is rolled, how the powers work, how interactions between players and NPCs happen. That's great. That's absolutely great. That is the best way to use Sandbox, as an introduction shakedown of a new game or system. So everyone can get the feel, doing their own thing, not stepping on anyone's toes, because you don't have a plan. But not having a plan for several weeks or months in a row can really exhaust the players, because they have to constantly think about something to do all the time. And the odds are they're getting further and further away from the game master's idea of where they wanted to go. So yeah, shorter the better. Better with new games, so everyone can get a feel for it. before you actually start a storyline or a campaign. That's what I think.
Okay. Let's hit the opposite side of the spectrum then with Sean. Same question for you, though. What types of campaigns or storylines do you believe are best suited for sandbox style and why?
The exact opposite of everything he just said.
Well, do tell us what that is.
For me, the best sandbox are the long-term campaigns with no predetermined end. Just, you are open world and exploration. You plunk them down. You've got a map. You've got a big world. You don't have to have a story planned. The story is what emerges from the choices that are made. So the players are the driving factor. You give them the map. Say, here's the world around. Where do you want to go? You've got rumors, you've got hooks, you've got all that stuff. I like to personally seed multiple dungeons, and they don't even have to go to any of the ones I seed. So the idea that you have to have it wrapped up in 2 or 3 sessions, and no, for me that's bonkers. For me, it's like, no, there is no predetermined end. We're going to play and we're going to see what happens. That's the best sandbox.
Okay. Before we do any sort of follow-ups or whatever, I'm going to jump on over. So if the folks out there haven't figured this out, and this isn't going to be true 100% of the time, but generally speaking, Heathen Dog's obviously on the railroad side, Sean is obviously on the sandbox side, and Lord Mateus fits somewhere in the middle. So we'll see what kind of hybrid answer we get from this. Lord Mateus, same question for you.
Before Lord Mateus goes, I just want to add one thing. I mean, to Heathen Dog's point, something he mentioned was having the campaign story and having a predetermined story. And you don't need that for the sandbox. You are emerging. Now, if you're coming from the point of view of you want to have this grand story, you're not entirely in the sandbox zone, because you already have a plan, a path.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the reason I said it like that is because I think the question is fundamentally flawed, because it talks about campaign storyline with sandbox, which to me does not compute.
Well, before you guys hold on to that, both of you, because I think that is a good line of discussion. Let's let Lord Mateus answer the question first, and then we'll open it up. You guys talk back and forth, and we'll see if we either agree to disagree or come to some consensus. So, Lord Mateus, I'll ask the question again. What types of campaigns or storylines do you believe are best suited for sandbox style, and why?
Well, I agree with Sean. I mean, the very fundamental aspect of the sandbox is the player's agency, and they're the ones creating the storylines. They're the ones coming up with the goals, and as far as you, the game master, your job is simply to just provide what I like to call character to the world, and that's like the type of encounter tables you're using. So the spider haunt woods have a lot of spiders in them, right? But that's it. That's all you're doing. Maybe there's a dungeon in there and you see a rumor, but it's all the players doing that. I don't think it's wrong, though. And this is what I've done with my Lamentations of Elemental Evil campaign that I've been running for almost 2 years now. Well, 2 years now, going into our third. I have a theme, and the theme is the Temple of Elemental Evil is the source of all evil in the Borderlands. And so ultimately the players knew that they were going to be heading in that direction. But up until that point, they were just kind of exploring this little area I called the Borderlands, that had all these different rumors and things that they could do. But that's the closest I've come to having like a plan. I just my theme was like mushrooms and eat the temple and dark fantasy politics.
Eat the temple?
No, and no mushroom. No, I'm not going to derail this conversation with that.
Temple, right?
But those were like the 3 things I thought of for that campaign, and so that's all I've been using.
I was waiting for that. Hold on, let's put that on the screen for just a second here. I gotta make you full. There's solo layout. There you go. And you can buy that shirt off of Legionofmyth Redbubble store.
No, I think I would implode if I wore that shirt.
Matter and antimatter, right?
Yeah, right. So one of the things I do want to remind you guys is that we are going to be talking about the challenges of each style in segment 3. So I don't want to dive too deeply into that, but there is obviously a little bit of a difference here when it comes to the idea of campaigns, the longevity of a campaign and storyline. I don't like that term either. That's just kind of when I had the question rewritten, that's how it came out. Oops. But I'm going to add on to this, so then you guys can just continue with the discussion, is add in how you balance the player freedom with the need of a coherent story, because I think that's where Heathen Dog was getting to, and that's kind of what the follow-up question to this was anyway. But go ahead and finish what you guys were talking about. Lord Mateus, jump in where you want to as well. In the terms of long campaign versus short campaign, this does work, this doesn't work. I don't care which one of y'all starts. I was just letting you go back. I just needed him to answer his version of the question first before we got into the discussion. So
when I do one of my campaigns, I plan for long term. Like I say, hey guys, I'm running a campaign. Who's in? And then we just see where it goes. I don't have a story mapped out. Like I've got a collection of modules. I will feed in modules. And one of my big ones right now is Night Below. There it is, which is a massive story. It's an undertaking, but it kind of blends both the sandbox and the storytelling approach. But that's still part of it. And I think the key thing is a lot of DMs will see their story through come hell or high water, whereas I like to, again, leave the players in the driver's seat. If the players abandon the mission and go fuck off, then I will adapt. I will work with that. I'm not going to maneuver them back onto the story that I want. I will just think, okay, now how does their abandoning the quest impact the world, right? Because there's an overarching plot by enemies. The enemies are trying to accomplish a goal. If they accomplish a goal, how does it change the shape of the world? And then we move forward.
All right. I can refute that. Players, by their very nature, are whiny bitches. I know, I was one. And when I'm a player, I'm a whiny bitch. This is what happens. If you give the players too much agency or actual agency, I give them false agency. They think they have choices, but they really don't. If you give them actual agency, they will fuck off anywhere and do whatever they want. And then your plan of the storyline is progressing, time is progressing, the bad guys have now had time to complete their plan, and the whole world goes to shit. You know whose fault that is? In reality, it's the player's fault for screwing off somewhere. But in their eyes, it's your fault. It's the game master's fault. How could you do this to them? Whether they say it or not, they're thinking it. So you can't win. You let them do their own thing, they're going to have a bad time. In the end, they're going to dig themselves a hole and blame you for falling in it.
You must have the worst players. My players eat that stuff up. So
I have kind of a hybrid. My players, in my Lamentations of Elemental Evil game, they've been really good sports. I have an incredibly high body count because they do things where I know that's a double entendre there, but I've killed many PCs. But like there's times where they do F off and they're not paying attention, and then oops, it comes back to bite them. And then, but they've never really complained. I have gotten a couple comments like, well, the Temple of Elemental Evil is pretty tough. I'm like, well, maybe start taking notes and keep track of this stuff, because I'm letting the dice fall where they may, because this is what I explained to them. This is what we're going to do. This is how this game is. I didn't really house rule much, at least definitely not the first year we were playing. But like in my in-person crew, they're a little different. Like I said, like they do need to be led by the nose a little bit more. But that's for a different segment, I guess. But I do want to touch base though on the idea of like the story, overarching story, and I want to reiterate, like, you can have something. Like, I'm fond of saying the game master is a player too, and they need to have their fun too, and that's why I don't like being called just a referee. I'm not. I'm a player. I wear many hats. I know it's a cliche, but I truly believe it. Sometimes I'm the HR department. I have to settle a player dispute. You know what I mean? Yeah, I need a hat like that. So when I sat down to play. Put together this Temple of Elemental Evil campaign, I wanted to use Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I wanted to use those modules to seed the sandbox. I took it out of Greyhawk because I'm not a fan of Greyhawk. And I made some themes that kind of are overarching the entire thing. So like I went to town and had a blast kind of diving into the factions of Hamlet, and it was like a political mess. And my players initially were like, we don't want to deal with this, and they were actually camping outside of Hamlet for a while, getting eaten by bears, frankly. But so you can do that, and the players still have that agency of a sandbox style,
True.
but you, the game master, can still have that sort of very loose story, but it's all centered around themes. Like, I'm looking forward to when they finally get to the bottom of Temple of Elemental Evil, and fingers crossed they don't get killed by what's down there. Those who play it know what's at the bottom. And if they succeed, that's going to be great. And then my campaign's over.
Okay.
But I've had some TPKs. That's like, you guys gotta keep playing this? And they're like, yeah. So we roll up some more characters and keep going. So
to your point about the DM having fun, I agree. The DM is also a player at the table, and this speaks to me. I'm not going to project onto you guys, but I love seeing what happens. I love being surprised, and that's part of the appeal of the sandbox style to me. It's like, okay, I've got the framework, but I want to see what happens when they interact. I don't want to know what the outcome is going to be. That's why I let the dice decide things in terms of, well, I roll out in front when it's combat and stuff like that, but reaction adjustments, random and counter charts, I use all that shit because I want to see what comes. And the fun and the challenge for me is really justifying the outlandish shit that comes out of the blue, right?
Spoiler alert for the next segment when we actually talk about that.
Okay, I'll rewind.
No, I'm not mad, but that is. I mean, we're going to talk about the appeal of each type, so it would be fun. I can't wait to dive into that more. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with that one. I just thought
that's okay. We're going to talk about it shortly anyway. But yeah, I just wanted, because he mentioned the DM being a player too, and yeah, for me, that's why I come to the table. That's why I love keeping it open. I want to see how the players are not only going to interact with the scenario, but interact with each other. And I love when they start butting heads over decisions or when alignment comes to play. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, there's a lot of the personal taste in there as well.
Quick question for each of you, because one of the things that Heathen Dog and I both get kind of blasted about is that we'll see in the comments all the time, because he's much more so than me, but we both have these negative experiences with players, both as being players, but also. We've played with a lot of different people, and I'm not even talking conventions, but like I was in the military. I've played all over the world with many different groups. My longest campaign that I ever ran was only 2.5 years. Now, some people say it's a lot. Some people say that wasn't much at all. Most of the other ones were between a year and a half, and then somebody was moving on or the group was moving on. So we've played with a lot of different people. I actually agree with him on the terms that players suck most of the time. But my question for you saying all of that is this, do you have these really good static groups of friends, generally speaking? Because I think that changes the game for a lot of us as well. So what is your normal, we'll start with Heathen Dog, but what is your normal group? Is it all over the place? Is it the same static one you've had for 400 years? What is it?
I had a core group of 4 people and 2 or 3 coming and going, stuff like that. But they all fell in line with the core group of 4 players. Now I had that for, 10, 15 years. And then, one of them moved away. Another one had to get a second job, and another one got married to an awful woman.
That's what I was laughing about.
So George, he got married to an awful woman, and he stopped talking to me because, I was tired of seeing all of my friends with these awful women. And so I said something, and you know what happens when you say, don't worry about it. That doesn't matter. But he left too. And so my core gaming group fell apart, and I have gone to the local hobby shop, which is the biggest in Southern Michigan, and ran a couple of games there. And you get a lot of different people if you go to a not a gaming convention, but a gaming store where they also have tables that you can rent or use or whatever. You get a hodgepodge of just everyone, all walks of life, everywhere. It could be from the brand new guy to the old man who's all grizzled and I started in the war games, stuff like that. And like, that's great, man. That's
I remember
great.
when OD&D needed chainmail. That's the way it should be.
Did you actually just fart dust? You know, stuff like that. You get all that. And through all of that, I have formed my opinion about players being bitches of varying caliber. They all want it their way. They all want it all the time. And whenever I let go of the reins or loosen, let go, that's dumb. That's foolish. Whenever I loosen the reins a little bit, you know, they, you know, I give them an inch and they'll take my groin, you know, that just all of it.
Say it the way you did on the live stream last
All
time.
right. Give them an inch and they'll take my penis. That's exactly what happens when you give players who aren't your friends. If you're friends already, they're not, unless they secretly hate you, they're not going to purposefully torpedo your ideas by going off and fucking around. Yeah, they're not going to do it on purpose. But random people who don't know you, who are not your friends, they will think of themselves first and you never. And that's what'll happen. So that's why the railroad is the best road.
All right, so Sean, basically same thing for you. I mean, what's your general group dynamic like?
Well, my AD&D game is a consistent group of 6. Every once in a while, 1 or 2 people can't make it, and so I'll have a guest player. But I've got sort of a circle of friends that if I've got a game going, they're free. They'll like to sit in. My AD&D game's been running now for, I guess, 11 years this year, maybe 12. No, 11. 2013. That's first ed. Prior to that, I had a second ed game which ran for about 18 years.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, with again rotation of players throughout, with some consistent through lines and things like that. Like my oldest friend, I've known him since junior high. He plays whenever he can, that kind of thing. So that group is pretty stalwart. They're in for the ride. My OSE game is West Marches style, so it's one of those cases where I've got a group of players. I'll just say, hey, game this day, and the first 5 or 6 people who say they can make it form the team, and then they decide what they're going to do. So it's a bit of both, really. Bit of the chaos West Marches. I don't know who's going to show up, and then the AD&D is okay. It's 6 specific players, and if there's an empty seat, I'll reach out to somebody else and say, hey, there's a spot if you want to sit in for the day. Right?
Okay. And Lord Mateus, your typical group that you've got over the course of your time?
My in-person crew, like I mentioned earlier, I've been gaming with them for a very, very long time. My best friend, like I introduced him to the game in 1988, and we've been gaming together ever since. I ran a 10-year-long campaign in the 90s, a second edition, and we transitioned to third edition. But that was more of a railroad story time, adventure path style. And that's been pretty consistent. Some people come and go. And so we know each other. And like I said, I know what they like, generally speaking. So I try to present things to them. We've been playing The Walking Dead RPG from Free League, and that's more of a sandbox, which was really awesome to see them branch out and try something new. I'm not a big fan of that game, but you
should try Dead Rain.
I just might. But my online crew, I've only known for a few years, and I took a kind of a leap of faith because I kind of played with a few of them in other games. And so when I decided to do this Sandbox Lamentations game, I reached out to them. There was one guy I didn't know, and he's ended up being like one of my favorite players because he's so damned enthusiastic. He does the voices, and he's like really, really into it. He's so into it, he tends to metagame because he gets really excited, and I love it. I actually don't mind it because of his enthusiasm. But we do have people that come and go, and I also run some one shots where I get some randos, and there's been a few. 2 in particular, I had to say they're banned. I can't have them on my Discord because of the way they acted. So that does happen. But you know what? I'm willing to risk it because, not to put too fine a point on it, not to risk overstatement. There's something really special about this hobby, and I really like meeting people. All my lifelong friends that I've had come from this hobby. I've become friends with other people in various stages of my life. Work friends, that sort of thing. And we may see eye to eye on a lot of things, but then once I change jobs or something, we drift apart. Not my gaming crews. Okay. So that's why I just love meeting new people, because you never know. You never know.
All right. Well, The point of that question was just to see if, because of our experiences and who we gamed with, and I'm going to say to some degree, maybe not the full 100% solution, but I'm going to hit the Pareto 80% solution. I think that does actually affect a lot of what influences us. Like I said, I'm not nearly as as antagonistic towards the players as him, but I've seen a lot of the stuff that he talks about. And to be fair, I've only had a couple of bad players in my games, but I've been around a ton of bad players, whether as another player myself or at the table right next to me, things like that where, we pick up on this. But we do have to move on because I wouldn't say we're limited time, but we're kind of limited time. And that was a little off topic there. So let's go to the flip side. Let's change it. We're going to start with Sean.
Okay.
Now, this question is the same ones we had before, but we're going to put it in the story. The Sandbox side. What types of campaigns or storylines do you believe are best suited? For Railroad style, and why?
Well, the obvious one is the one shot. The one shot, or even a mini series campaign. If you're going to do a one shot, especially as you say, you have players you don't know. If you're running a game at a store or a convention, you're going to want to keep it a little tighter. You don't have the luxury of saying, well, we're running an indefinite campaign, so we can putz around for 3 sessions. You've got to get it done, one and done. So there's a little more utility for keeping things on point and getting them to the destination by the end of your 4-hour slot.
Okay. Lord Mateus, same thing. What type of storylines do you believe are best suited for, or campaigns or storylines for Railroad style?
Well, I agree pretty much what Sean just said. Definitely a strict Railroad is perfect for like a one and done type game. Though I don't think like I said, I had a 10-year campaign go, so it's possible to have a long-term game, but you just have to have the players dedicated to do it. But I interpreted that question similar to how Heathen Dog interpreted it, like what storylines. I don't think pulp, sword and sorcery type games work well with Railroad, because that really is what was the sort of the genesis, the influence for the original game, which was very open-ended. So I think those are for the Sandbox. So, but I am really into horror gaming. I'm a Lamentations fan. I love horror. I love taking away player agency and just saying, okay, guess what? The alien is coming for you, or you're now infected with some disease, no save, too bad. What are you going to do? So I think I can't imagine. I actually tried to think about this earlier. Like, what would a horror sandbox look like? And I'm not entirely sure what that would. I'm not saying you can't do it. I just don't know what it would look like. So I think if you're going to run horror, a more Railroad style works. Investigative, especially like Call of Cthulhu, which is a bit of both, right? They're following.
What type of game do you think he runs a lot? You're basically saying what Heathen Dog does.
Oh, well, perfect. Awesome.
He's got Let's Plays on from the last 2 Veterans Days.
Both of them are Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Well, that's cool. Yeah, and then I was also kind of, thinking like maybe even spy thrillers, because I know Agents of Wretch Through the Red Room is like a Cold War spy. That has like a definitive end, even if it's a small little mission they're going on. So I think that's what you'd want to use a Railroad for, or but yeah, short or long. I mean, it's malleable. Like, I don't think you can put a time on a limit on any of the games, because you just never know what could happen.
Well, if you're at a convention, you have no choice.
Well, yeah, at the convention, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's like the one shot. Just use a Railroad. They bought their ticket, literally, right?
Yeah, it's fair. Okay, Heathen Dog, finishing up with you, because you're the Railroad dude. What types of campaigns or storylines do you believe are best suited for Railroad style, and why?
And this will come as a shock to absolutely no one. I believe that everything that Sean said is ridiculous and wrong. But here's why I believe that. Not why he's wrong, why I believe he's wrong. Just like in space travel. I'm talking real life space travel. If you are 1/10 of a degree off your course between here and, say, anywhere, I don't know, the next town over, you're still going to hit the next town over. The longer you have until your destination, the more off course you become. So the more you let these players run roughshod all over your world, the more away from the point they're going to be. The longer the campaign, the more ways they have to screw themselves over, because like I said, they're little children. The more times, the more way they have to screw themselves over, and then your whole world is a gigantic mess where the Dark Lord now rules over everything and is bored because these foretold heroes that were going to come and save the day never actually arrived. Whereas in the single game session or three game session campaign, there's less time for them to screw up, and there's less choices that they could possibly make because of the time constraints. There's just not enough time to not get to the end. There's not. Think of it, I think of it like this. If you're playing at a convention, you have 4 to 6 hours usually for a game, beginning to end. Now, if you look at that like a pathway, you have the 3 rooms. The room you begin in, another room you go through as part of what happens to you, and then the final room where you end the adventure. There's not a whole lot of choices there. There's not a whole lot of ways to go left and right, even if they're imaginative, arrogant little bitches as players. Even all of that, they still can't screw it up. They don't have the time. But a long campaign, 6 months, year, 2 years, this 3-room system has now become a 55-room mega dungeon, and they could end up literally anywhere than where they're supposed to be to actually get something done. Now, I understand that where they're supposed to be is a railroad idea. I am not ignorant of this, and I agree. Yes, it is. Now, the idea what is best suited for the railroad style, what's best suited is the longer campaign, because there are so many ways that every player could make a decision that's bad, and then another bad decision, and by the time they make 3 bad decisions, they're off nowhere, and they're completely out of the loop. They're completely off the plot, off the reservation, just gone. And then you have to move heaven and earth trying to get them back. Now, well, if they went there, they didn't want to be in your storyline because they purposefully left it. Heathen dog, so it means you're a bad storyteller. I counter that with saying they're bad players. And for some reason, I lost my brain and allowed them to be bad players at my table.
You're supposing, though, a story. This is where the disjoint comes. You are presupposing beats where they have to be, places they have to get to, whereas the sandbox style and the open world concept, that none of that exists.
Right, but this is for the railroad style. We're talking about the railroad style. What is best suited for the railroad style? You said it was short adventures. I say it's long adventures, and the reason it's long adventures is because if you don't keep them, okay. I've said this before, and Mateus alluded to this earlier, which I clocked, is that me as a railroad game master, it's not my job to get you from point 1 to point 2 to point 3 to point 4 up like all the way to the end. It's my job to keep you in the direction of the end of the story. It's kind of like bowling with bumpers. I'm the bumper. I'm not going to let you gutter ball. Gutter ball is derailing the story. I'm not going to allow it. Not going to allow you to gutter ball my whole campaign. It's not going to happen. So I got bumpers. I'm the bumpers. I keep you in play up until the end where the pins are. Now, how many pins you get down, that's on you. That's what dice does, right? That's what dice are for. But I'm going to get you to the end. Whether you win or not is on you, but I'm going to get you to the end. And the longer the campaign, the more that is necessary. Now, of course, you need to give players, you need to throw them a bone here and there. You know, give them a day or two for their own character development, because players are very greedy. They want. Max understands this, that's why he keeps all of his players poor, so they can never have.
That is true.
So I have the opposite. Short campaign, you don't need to rein them in because there's not enough choices for them to go too far astray. The longer the campaign, the more bad choices they can make, and the more of roughshod they can run all over your entire framework of a world.
Okay. You guys want to say anything? We're kind of the open discussion side of this. Once you're done, I'll read some super chats and we'll move on. But please, anything you've got to say towards what he just said there, go ahead. Or anything, because he was the last one. So if there's any more you guys want to add to this discussion as a whole, go ahead.
I'll just say I agree with the bumper. I actually, that's a really good analogy. If you're a game master that's going to run an adventure path, railroad, whatever you want to call it, you absolutely have to do that. And I do think that can still allow for some player agency where players feel like they're making some meaningful choices, just so long as you, the game master, are.
He said the exact right thing. Everyone pay attention. He said make the players feel like they have agency, make them feel like they're making decisions and they're placated. They're happy. They're on their little, I got my way opioid high. Give them a real decision and they'll ruin your life.
Back in the 90s during that 10-year campaign, I used to refer to it as the illusion of choice, right? Like
that's exactly what he calls it too. And he stresses that word illusion with such force that
Malice.
See, well, the funny thing is, like, I've been playing more Sandbox lately, partly out of because I've just done the railroad thing. I'm kind of done with it, but also partly I feel kind of guilty at times with that illusion of choice, because I do think, kind of going back to something Sean said earlier, I like seeing what happens. I'm at that point now where it's just like, let's see what happens. I literally say that right before I hit record on my actual play. Okay, guys, let's see what happens. And then off we go. So, but that being said, I'm not opposed to running the adventure path. And if you are going to do that, I think it is an absolute must to develop that skill of bumping. So,
see, that's just where it comes to preference of style. Like I hate that. I hate that bumper style I hate illusion of choice. I don't want to be sitting in a game where it's like, all right, so no matter what's going to happen, you're going to bump me on course and we're going to get to the end regardless. I like the open world. I like the fact that my choices have shaped the story. And then that's what the game I try to present to my players. So when you say they go off the reservation, well, there's no reservation to go off. I want to see what happens. I want to see how they deal with the situations they've put themselves into. Right. And as a DM, I'm the one who will say, okay, well, you got lost in the woods. Well, I guess I've got my wilderness survival guide. Let's see if you can forage for food. Oh, there's random encounters. You get that armor off. You get heat exhaustion until you find the river and get back to civilization. That's just one possibility. And there's no going off the reservation. And so, yeah, the idea of the bumper path, it frustrates me. And that's why I don't like that style of play. Not to knock it for those who do. And so there, in my games, there is no illusion of choice. Your choices are yours, and what happens.
I think we're going to definitely get into that in segments 2 and 3 more when we talk about more benefits and challenges of each type as well. Anything else you guys want to add to this, or should I hit some chat and then move on to the next one?
Hit the chat.
All right. Well, we did have a super chat here from Brian James. Brian James, thank you very much for the $5 share. He says, great discussion. The most fun campaigns are the ones that lean sandbox. You can always add specific encounters here and there along the way. So thank you for the $5. By the way, I've been reading the chat. If it seems like I'm not paying attention to them, I am also trying to read the chat at the same time. But a lot of great discussion going on there. We are not going to put up everything that people said. I don't have time for that. But apparently Heathen Dog grabbed one or two also on here.
I had to start a couple just because I had to respond.
Okay. So this is why I've been saying drink. Bear said every time someone says player agency, we have to take a shot. And agency has come up a few times in here.
Well, I gotta go get my liquor. All right.
I know.
It's replacing the word Earthdawn tonight. So there we go. Drama Goblin says Sandbox can do larger stories, but you don't want to approach them like stories. It's a daisy chain of setup, delivery, and adaptable seeds. At least that's what I've been doing so far.
Yeah, if you want to do a lot of unnecessary work, Sandbox is your jam. Fine, okay.
It's actually less work. Well, it's all top-loaded work.
Oh, no. It's less prep, but more. Sometimes they go so far that you have to scramble to figure out what is actually going to happen now, what is feasible, because as a game master, everything that happens in the world has to have reason to it, has to have reason for that world. For like a random group of goblins is going to act like another random group of goblins, they have to react the same. Where if they go so far that you didn't realize that they could actually do that until they did it, now you're scrambling a bit. You're like, okay, I'm not really sure what's over there because I didn't think what was going to happen. Do I randomly generate this area of the world? Well, if I do, will it interfere with anything that I've already done?
And this is the major disjoint here. Is for you that's a bad thing. For you that's an aggravation. But for me, that's the fun. That is where the meat comes, because now I'm challenged in justifying. I'm challenged in creating something new and adapting. And I want that. I want that surprise. I want that experience. So that's the disjoint.
It's like I call it a battery and you call it a carburetor. We're just not speaking the same language.
Well, that's actually like what I was thinking about this earlier today. I'm hoping I'm not gonna get asked which style is better, because I feel like we're talking about a wrench versus a hammer. They're just, to me.
No, there is no question that's going to specifically come out and say which style is better. It's obvious between these two, and again, you're kind of in the middle. But it is going to. We are going to be moving into challenges and appeal. Matter of fact, the next one is going to be the appeal of each style, and then at the end, I think it's how do we use them. How do you best use them for your games?
That's ultimately my point. To me, it's like, what do you need for your next campaign based on all these factors that you're thinking about, both in game and out of game? Do I need a more railroad, or do I need a sandbox? Do I need the hammer, or do I need the wrench? So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't have a preference.
Yeah, I mentioned it before the stream started. Both are tools. You use the right tool for the job.
I started this one because, and this is no knock, Kentucky Rex has been following us for a while, and he has some really good comments on there. But this is one of the things that somebody was mentioning before, like railroad itself is a loaded word. Depending on who you are, every one of these terms, like to me, the word story is a loaded term. I actually don't have a problem with it, but I've been so conditioned by the people around, like story, no bad, that I actually become gun shy with the term, even though I don't necessarily mean it. How they're saying it. So he says here, instead of story for railroad, you should probably instead use the term narrative. A story emerges from sandbox play. I get what he's saying. I'm not disagreeing with him, but if I were to say that to somebody else, the next person would be like, no, that's story gaming, dude. We don't use narrative and plots. That's just a story. Oh my God, you just can't win in this one. But Kentucky Rex makes a very good point.
Yeah, I mean, the reason we can't change it like that is because when we say storyline or railroad, that is language that people understand generally what we're talking about. If we start changing it to make it more specific or less or more pedantic or whatever, then people are going to ask, what the hell is he talking about? And we don't want that.
All right. I was going to read the next comment, but I'm not now because she deleted it in the actual, so I won't put it up there. But Nerd, I had your comment start until you deleted it. So we'll move on to okay. This one's for apparently Heathen Dog started this one. So
yeah, I'm not talking about Upper Peninsula and Lower Peninsula. I'm talking about Michigan. Here's the lower part of the Lower Peninsula. Up here, I think around right here around Traverse City, there is a gaming shop that's like 5 gaming shops in one. It's freaking huge. It's the biggest one in the state. But where I live, right around here, there's one very nearby that's the biggest from here down. So that's what I was getting at. Upper Peninsula, that's all like fishermen and weed stores. That's pretty much all they have up there.
I might be misreading stuff because I'm kind of focused on the chat here, but I hope people aren't fighting over here in the chat. So I'm clueless if it is. I might be misunderstanding. So I don't like to ban people, time out, whatever. So I'm just going to pretend I'm misunderstanding, but be cordial, folks. Remember, you don't get to attack people. You can attack ideas, though. Malachi says, I think sandboxes are better for a game store. There's less of a commitment with them. I think this was to Heathen Dog.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if it's a random player that you don't know, like at a store or at a convention, then you would want to do short, either like 3 to 5 adventure campaign, or even one shots, and those can be sandbox because there's not enough time for the players to screw everything up. And then you will get to know them. You'll get to know if what they can do, what they can't do, and then you can propose a longer actual campaign with a story or narrative or whatever you want to call it. And I find that everyone has more fun with that. But yeah, I mean, with the random people that you don't know, it's best to be cautious, start small, and then bring in the rails little at a time until you're actually comfortable. Now you're in the driver's seat of this table, and then everyone can have a good time.
All right, I'm going to start moving a lot faster. This segment's taken way longer than it should have, but if you guys do have something you need to say, you can jump in, but I'm going to push the speed on this a little bit here. So Bob Vecna says, let's be honest, DMing would be so much easier if it weren't for the fucking players. I don't know if he's making fun of you or if he's agreeing with you, but either way, I thought it was funny.
You know what? Because it's text, I'm going to say he's agreeing with me.
Okay. On the flip side, in defense of Heath the Dog, I played in one of his games, a one-shot, and it did not feel like a railroad. I played a campaign of his. And look, but I'm a different type of player. This is like Bear's game. Bear's game, we know we're on a specific type of quest. Could I be like, screw this, I'm going left, and everybody should go with, let's not do this entire thing. It's just dumb. It's just fantasy, whatever. Probably could do it, but that's just being a bad player in my opinion. So I'm playing along. I don't feel railroaded and like, I have to do this. Okay, fine. We'll go to the top of the hill because that's where you want us to go. I've never felt like that. But yeah, there is definitely a, look, I know what the mission of my character is, and that's what we're heading toward, if that makes sense.
Yeah. If you can't see the rails, you're not going to feel the bumps. So there you go.
The great DM James apparently changed his name again for $2. Thank you very much for $2. Says the best way is the Condor way. Are you beefing with him again? Don't beef with Condor. Gunther the Mad for $5. Thank you for the $5, sir. Says it's not necessarily which is better, it's which is better for you given your circumstances. Embrace both. And I think this is what Lord Mateus was saying. Oops, there we go.
Exactly. Good game master has many tools in his toolbox. I even have a Bro SR tool. One of these days I'm going to pull out and run.
You have it. It's just rusty.
All right, so the next segment is going to be on the appeal of each style, and I am going to just a smidgen here because I really want to get to segment 4. I'm good because a lot of it was actually kind of said in segment 1. So I'm going to rush them a little bit, but I'm still going to allow them to have their say and what they need to say. I'm just going to ask everybody to be kind of succinct on stuff, and I might not have a bunch of follow-ups. With that said, chat, you guys have been hitting the nail on the head, whether you're pro railroad, whether you're pro sandbox, or somewhere in between. I've been reading it. You guys are awesome there. We've read the super chat. So what I want to say before we go into the next video, though, is if you think you have some presence or charisma, that's right, charisma, the ability to infotain, edutain, a good AV setup free from noise pollution, and an interest in discussing tabletop RPGs in this format, join the Some Rando RPG livestream Discord. Link is in the description to stay tuned for future topics. Help us get to know you, and maybe we'll get you on the show to talk about your experiences. I mean, look, this is Lord Mateus' first time on. He made it. He made the cut. And as a matter of fact, due to a medical cancellation, this isn't going to affect the people who see this on video later, but for the people watching a live stream, due to a medical cancellation, we do have a spot open for next week to talk about future TTRPGs, although I may have already had somebody say he wants to join. I just don't have the confirmation yet. So please, if you enjoyed this discussion, please like this video and subscribe to all of the panelists' channel, which hopefully you can find in the description. If not, again, I asked them to put it in private chat so that I can get it in there for them.